"You're not invited to Thanksgiving," my dad said casually. "Then don't expect my $6,000, I replied while canceling their heating. I was slouched on my ragged couch, lazily flipping through a wrinkled car magazine when my father's call sliced through the quiet of late October. The faint buzz of my electric heater vibrating in my cramped apartment, I pressed the speaker button, bracing for his usual gruff remarks. Perhaps the garage door was jammed again, or Mom's most recent baking disaster had clogged the drain. But his words crashed into me like a brick through glass. "Barbara, you're not coming to Thanksgiving this year," he stated, casual and blunt, as if canceling an ordinary appointment. "It's better this way. Keeps your sister content." The magazine slid from my grasp, pages scattering across the faded cushions as his statement sank in slow and bitter. "What?" I asked, my voice rough, dragging out like corroded metal. Scraping together, he let out that long, exasperated sigh he always used to sidestep arguments. "Janice has been tense lately. You know how she is. She doesn't want any stress, and neither do we. It's just easier if you sit this one out." Swung my legs off the couch, my boots hitting the scratched wooden floor with a hollow thump, my gaze locking onto the coffee table, its chipped edge catching the dim glow of a flickering secondhand lamp. "Sit this one out," I repeated, the words settling in my lungs like ash. "You're telling me I'm being excluded from our family's Thanksgiving because Janice is feeling overwhelmed." His tone remained steady, cold, and final. "Don't blow this out of proportion, Barbara. It's just one day you'll be fine." A sharp heat twisted up my spine, my fingers gripping the rough wood of the table. "One day," echoed my voice, sharpening like a blade against stone, "and the $6,000 I've been spending to keep your house warm all year. That means nothing too, does it?" Silence stretched between us, the phone line crackling faintly before he finally muttered, "Let's not make this about that. You offered to help." I let out a harsh, jagged laugh that slashed through the peeling walls, slicing the silent. "Offered?" I stood up, the floor creaking beneath me. "I've been covering your heating bill for 2 years, $6,000 just this year because you and Mom couldn't handle the cost after Janice's disaster. Drained you dry, but sure, I beg to do it." He grunted, irritation lacing his voice. "We appreciate it, Barbara, but this isn't about money. It's about family. Janice needs this right now. She's in a fragile state." I walked to the window, watching the first flakes of snow scatter against the glass, faint under the glow of streetlights blurring through the evening haze, fragile. "And I murmured, letting the words sit cold and heavy like the frost outside. "Janice needs this. Janice always needs, and I'm always the one paying the price. Not this time. Dad, enjoy your drama-free dinner." Jabbed at the screen, ending the call, then tossed my phone onto the couch, its display as dark as my breath fogging in. The dim light Janice she had always been, the golden child. Prom queen, Mom's pride. At the bakery counter, Dad's little dreamer. Even when her dreams collapsed 2 years ago, she had burned through their savings, $20,000 gone in a failed online boutique she swore would change everything. It didn't. The website crumbled in weeks. Unsold inventory sat, rotting in a damp storage unit, and Mom cried into her tea while Dad just shrugged and said she'll recover. Hadn't argued. I had just stepped up, taken over their heating expenses, because winters here were merciless and they couldn't afford fuel without me. $500 a month, $6,000 a year wired straight from my warehouse paychecks, while Janice posted pictures of rooftop drinks and designer coats she hadn't earned. I had let it slide because family was family. Until now, until Dad told me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving, the one day we all showed up no matter what. I reached for my laptop on the messy shelf, sinking back into the couch as its worn frame groaned beneath me, and logged into the utility account I had set up for them. My name was on it. I had been the one calling the oil company, scheduling deliveries, making payments because Dad couldn't figure out the online system. And Mom had simply smiled and said, "You're just so good at this, Barbara." There it stood, $6,000 drained away this year. Each penny carved from my extra hours, my aching joints, my pre-dawn shifts spent laboring in the warehouse's bitter chill. I pressed cancel service, my touch as unwavering as the thickening snowfall outside, a silent guarantee of the freezing days ahead. They'd figure it out, call the provider, scramble to fix it. But not before their home turned into an ice block. A notification appeared on the screen, service discontinued effective November 1st, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I snapped the laptop shut, a grim grin tugging at the corners of my mouth. Let's see just how fragile Janice feels when the warmth disappears. The following weeks crawled by, snow stacking higher outside my apartment, the frigid air slicing through the thin walls. I kept moving, grinding through warehouse shifts, lugging crates across the loading docks, my gloves rigid with ice as the wind shrieked through the gaps. No calls yet, just the steady rhythm of my own uninterrupted life. One evening I stopped by the diner with Brian, my old high school buddy turned auto mechanic, the place filled with the chatter of tired voices and the clinking of silverware against plates. He slid into the seat across from me, a steaming basket of fries between us, his grin wide as he grabbed a handful. "You're quiet tonight," he said, smearing ketchup on his fingers. "Something on your mind?" Took a sip of my beer, the bottle cool, and slick in my grasp and let the words spill out. Dad's call. Janice's excuse, my sudden exclusion they uninvited me from Thanksgiving, I said, leaning back as the worn vinyl booth creaked beneath me. After I covered their heating $6,000, this year, 2 years straight. His eyes widened, ketchup dripping onto the tabletop as he froze mid-bite. "Are you serious? And they just assumed you'd keep paying," I nodded, plucking a fry from the pile. "Yep." "Not anymore," I shut it off. "They'll feel it soon." He laughed, a loud, rough burst that earned a sharp look from the waitress. "That's cold, Barbara. Literally love it," I smirked, knocking my bottle against his, the glass ringing clear in the diner's warm buzz. They chose Janice. I chose me, the cozy heat of the diner wrapped around me, a stark contrast to the storm I had set in. Motion miles away, something solid and unshakable settled in my chest, a weight I hadn't realized I needed. November 1st. Arrived the cutoff date, and I pictured their furnace silencing the pipes, groaning as the chill crept into the walls. Thanksgiving was still weeks away, but the snow had come early, thick and relentless, covering everything in an icy hush. I kept moving, work, a stop at the hardware store for a shovel and a bag of salt, the cashier nodding toward the frost-covered streets outside Big Storm. On the way, he remarked, dropping my items into a bag. I smirked, imagining their thermostat plummeting, the cold seeping into every corner. That night, I swung by the corner store, picking up a few cans of soup and a fresh loaf of bread. Cashier making small talk while she scanned my grocery. "This one's going to be a rough one," she said, gesturing to the swirling snow outside. I grinned, picturing their house, silent furnace, icy floorboards, winter creeping through every crack. The first message came midweek, just as I was sweeping my floor, dust swirling in the dim light. A text from Mom. "Barbara, the heat's out. Did you pay? It's getting chilly." I ignored it, tipping the dustpan into the trash, heartbeat steady. An hour later, Dad's call came through, his voice gruff in my voicemail. "Furnace is down. Look into it." "Barbara, I didn't." Janice's message landed. Blast sharp and insistent. "Fix this. It's freezing. Do something." I smirked, setting the broom aside. The warmth of my own apartment, a quiet contrast to their oblivion. The days passed, the storm built, and their messages came slowly at first. Then, like a flood, by mid-November, Mom's texts were frantic. "Barbara, it's 55 degrees. Call the oil company." Dad's calls stacked up, 5, then 8. His voicemail snapping. "Pay it. Barbara, this isn't funny." Janice's messages were laced with rage. "You're heartless. I'm freezing now." I was at work, shifting a pallet of canned goods, the warehouse air slicing through my coat. When I played Mom's latest voicemail, "Barbara, the temperature's dropping fast. We're huddled in sweaters. What's happening?" I smirked, stacking the crates. The bitter cold, a perfect reflection of what they were about to endure. Thanksgiving was just 7 days away, and the weather report predicted an intense cold front. Flawless timing. Weekend prior, I stood in my small kitchen slicing onions for a hearty stew, condensation clouding the windows as the broth bubbled softly on the stove. My phone vibrated incessantly. 10 missed calls from my mother, 7 from my father, and a relentless flood of messages illuminating the screen. "Mom, Barbara, it's 45 degrees. We're freezing. Do something. Dad, turn the heat back on this instant. Janice, you're wrecking everything." "It's freezing." I stirred the pot, the spicy aroma thick in the air, imagining their home. Mom fussing over her lumpy mashed potatoes, Dad running a sharpening stone over his carving knife, Janice sulking in an expensive coat, all of them bundled up against the creeping cold 45 degree. Not unbearable yet, but the real chill was still coming. I scooped up a bowl, the warmth soaking into my fingers, and took a seat at my tiny table, letting their desperate messages pile up untouched, while I savored my meal in the quiet of my own space. When Thanksgiving morning arrived, a blizzard howled against my windows, thick snow swallowing the street. Below, in a blur of white, I remained indoors, dressed in jeans and a heavy flannel, the rich scent of brewing coffee curling through my apartment. My plans were simple: a modest roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a can of green beans, no turkey, nothing that would remind me of them. My phone remained a battleground. 15 missed calls from my mother, 12 from my father, messages stacking up like the snowdrifts outside. "Mom, Barbara, it's 40 degrees. We're bundled up in coats. Please help. Dad, fix this immediately. It's becoming dangerous. Janice, you're heartless. I'm sick because of you." I poured my coffee, inhaling the deep aroma as the wind shrieked through the city. My mind wandered to their dining room, the well-worn oak table scarred from years of family meals Mom still fretting over, her mashed potatoes Dad slicing into his usual overcooked turkey, Janice pouting in her designer coat while the cold wrapped tighter around them, 40 degrees still, manageable, but not for long. By midday, the storm intensified. The wind rattling, my windows, the outside world buried. Beneath relentless snowfall, the mist, calls surpassed 20. My mother's latest, voicemail trembling with urgency. Barbara, it's 35 sounding. Janice's in tears were shivering. Under blankets, please call someone. Preheated my oven. The rush of heat, spilling into the room as I slid the chicken inside. The steam rising from my freshly plated sides was a satisfying contrast to the desperation bleeding. Through my phone screen, a new message from my father came in thick with anger. This is ridiculous. Fix it now, Janice. I hate you. This is unbearable. I ate slowly, enjoying the tenderness of the meat, the creamy potatoes, the quiet warmth of my apartment while the storm outside grew more merciful. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, another message from my mother arrived, a final frantic plea. It's 32 degrees. Can't feel our fingers, Barbara. I'm begging you. I switched on a true crime podcast. The dark tale of deceit and betrayal droning at the background as their pleas faded into nothing. I leaned back, basking in the peace of my own heated sanctuary. By 6, the doorbell rang, a harsh interruption against the roar of the storm. Peering through the peephole, I spotted my father hunched beneath his thick winter coat, snow crusted along the edges of his hood, his face flushed from the cold under the weak glow of the porch light. I cracked the door open, leaning lazily against the frame, the inviting heat of my apartment spilling into the frozen night as he scowled, his breath rising in visible burst. Barbara, he snapped his voice from the chill. The heat's been shut off for weeks. This is your doing, isn't it? The house is an icebox. I folded my arms, meeting his furious glare without flinching. You told me I wasn't welcome. At Thanksgiving, said it was for the best. To keep Janice comfortable, I figured. That meant you didn't need me for anything else. His expression twisted. First shock, then frustration, his voice rising against the wind. That was just one day Janice is struggling. Your mother is falling apart. I took a step forward, cutting off his excuses with a calm but unshakable tone. One day I've poured $6,000 into keeping your house warm this year, 2 years in a row, while Janice lives like royalty. You made your decision, now you're cold. Pick up the phone, pay for it yourself, he flailed, shaking snow from his sleeves, his expression desperate. We can't, Barbara. We're broke. It's 30 deg in there, I remained, unmoved, my face unreadable. Not my problem. Happy Thanksgiving. I closed the door, the lock clicking firmly into place. His furious shouts vanished into the storm as his truck's engine growled to life, disappearing into the whiteout. Once inside, my phone exploded with messages. Mom, Barbara. We're freezing due. Something, Janice. You're heartless. I'm suffering, Dad. This isn't over, call me. Back, I sensed the notifications, letting my podcast play the warmth of my meal settling in my stomach. Friday arrived with lighter snowfall, but their panic only grew. Around midday, my cousin, Olivia, called, her voice filled with amusement as I scraped ice from my walkway. Barbara. They're falling apart. Janice is complaining about frostbite. Mom's wrapped in every blanket and Dad's begging neighbors for a heater. What did you do? Stopped paying their heating bill? I replied, tossing snow aside. Covered it for years, $6,000 this time. They pushed me aside for Janice, so I stopped covering their expenses. Olivia laughed. That's savage. Janice is ranting online, Mom's sobbing to Aunt Anna, and Dad's furious. I leaned on the shovel, smirking. Let them deal with it. She continued how they slept in layers. Their Thanksgiving dinner untouched, though, house dropping to 28 degrees overnight there. Miserable, she said. Barbara, you're a legend. As December settled in snow, blanketed everything. My life carried on, as usual. Work coffee runs quiet evenings. My heater's steady. Hum, a quiet victory. A week later, Olivia called as I stirred, chilly warmth filling my kitchen. There, still struggling, she said, barely holding back laughter. Janice ran off to stay. With a friend, Mom's living under piles of blankets and Dad's pleading with the oil company. I smirked. Figured things out. Yet, she snorted. Barely scraped together. Enough for a tiny refill. Mom's guilt. Tripping everyone, Dad's sulking, and Janice is acting like a victim. No one's buying it. I tasted the chili. The spice, just right. Let them handle their own mess. Olivia chuckled. You're ruthless. Good thing I'm not on your bad side. We hung up and I ate in peace the storm. Outside, a distant murmur at work, unloading shipments. The cold cut through my jacket. My phone buzzed Mom's voicemail, her voice small. Barbara, we're barely getting by. Can we fix this? Listened while lifting a crate. Figure it out, I muttered, deleting the message days. Later, as I sipped tea at home, the doorbell rang. Peeking outside, I saw Dad. Snow-dusted face tense, I cracked the door. Open warmth spilling out. Barbara, he said, voice low. It's been weeks. The house is unbearable. Mom's sick. Janice is gone. Held his gaze unwavering. You cut me out. Said it kept Janice happy. What's left to discuss? He shifted, jaw clenched. We never thought it'd get this bad, Mom's struggling. Janice disappeared. I cut him off. You didn't think I covered 6,000 this year, 2 years in a row while you catered to Janice. You made your choice. Now you're freezing, pay your own bills. He jerked back, fist clenching. We can't, Barbara. We're completely out of money. It's 35 degrees inside. I took a slow sip of tea, steam curling from the cup. Your decisions, your consequences. I'm finished. I shut the door, the lock, clicking into place, his muffled protests fading as he stomped back to his truck. The weeks passed, snow piling higher, my life steady, while theirs unraveled. Olivia's last update came over beers at the diner, cold fries sitting untouched. Between us, as she grinned, they're barely holding on tiny oil deliveries constant. Fighting Janice is crashing with some guy. Your mom's begging every relative. Your dad's selling junk just to keep going. You completely wrecked them, Barbara. I smirked, taking a sip of beer. They wrecked themselves. I just stopped, saving them. She raised her bottle to freedom. We clinked tea glasses, warmth settling in. While they shivered, January arrived, the cold, unrelenting. One evening, I sat with coffee in hand, city lights flickering through the window, snow glistening below. Then the doorbell rang. Mom stood outside, coat pulled tight, eyes hollow, snow dusting her scarf. I leaned against the doorframe, saying nothing. Barbara, she said, voice unsteady. We made a mistake. It's been miserable, though cold the fighting. We never realized how much you did. I exhaled, steam rising. From my mug, you never noticed, I said. Evenly, 2 years, $6,000 this year alone, until I stopped. You put Janice first. Again, I'm done cleaning up after you. She stepped closer, desperation in her eyes. We're sorry Janice is too. Can we fix this? I shook my head. Not now, I'm warm. You figure it out. I shut the door. Her voice muffled and returned to my couch coffee. Hot silence, 9 February. Came snow heavy, their troubles lingering. Like a bad odor, Olivia called one. Afternoon as I painted the sharp scent. Filling my apartment, Barbara there. Wrecked Janice got dumped. Your mom's stuck in a cheap motel. Your dad's selling off everything you really broke. Them. I wiped paint from my fingers, glancing at the fresh white wall. They made their choice. I said I made mine. Olivia laughed, sharp and wild there, still begging. But no one's listening. I nodded, watching the paint dry. Their downfall? Nothing but distant noise. March arrived, snow melting, but their desperation clung like damp rot. One morning I was outside splitting logs. From my fire pit, the axe driving into wood with a crisp crack. My phone buzzed. Olivia again, her voice filled with amusement. Barbara. They're done. Janice is couch surfing again. Your mom's pleading for loans. Your dad's running out of things to sell. You completely shattered them. I swung the axe again, the wood breaking clean. They built that world, I said, stacking the pieces. I just stopped heating it. Olivia cackled. I hung up, lit the fire, and watched the flames rise. Against the fading cold, they could freeze. I'd stay free.